Hello everyone, we are from the students of the Department of Applied Economics. Under the economic talks, we have already discussed about the land reforms. Now in this video, we are discussed about the tenancy reforms. So let's start the video. Over to Nishu Pandey. She will tell you about the history of the tenancy reforms.
First of all, I will talk about the history of a tenancy reform. In early 1950s, to control the rent payable by a cultivator, fair rent was established is 20 to 25% of a gross production in all state, exception of a Punjab, Haryana, Jammu Kashmir, Tamil Nadu, and some area of Andhra Pradesh. Now I will talk about what is a tenancy system. Tenancy system consists the owner of the land letting it out for a cultivation to somebody else instead of cultivating it himself. Now I will talk about why does it form and its need. Indian government implemented these regulations for protection of a farmer and labor from exploitation by placing a maximum limit on rent. Tenancy reform was introduced for neither farmer could make any changes in their field. No new technology was introduced. Productivity income remained low. Now over to Garima Nigam. She will tell us about meaning and objective of a tenancy reform.
Meaning of tenancy reform. Tenancy reform refers to the change and update made to laws, rules, and regulation governing the relationship between the tenants and the landlord. Tenancy reform aimed to provide improving rights and protections of both the parties, the tenants and the landlord. Tenancy reform ensuring fair, transparent and improving tenancy agreement and promoting stability and affordable housing options. Here are some tenancy reforms examples, including rent control measures, security deposit regulations, and maintain standard for rental properties. Government employed these reforms in local, state, and national level to addressing the issues such as housing affordability, homelessness, and tenancy rights. The objective of tenancy rights is enhancing tenants' rights and protection. It's aimed to provide tenants with increased rights and protections such as safeguards against unfair evictions, unjust rent income, and discrimination. Next one is promoting stability and affordable housing. It may involve implementing rent control measures, affordable housing initiatives, or subsidies for low income tenants, and ensuring affordable and accessible rent housing. Next one is improving living condition. Tenancy reform includes provisions that require landlord to maintain the properties in a safe and habitat conditions and addressing issues such as repair, maintenance, and building stand. Next one is fair, transparent tenancy agreement. Tenancy reforms aims to establish clear guidelines and regulation for both the parties, the landlord and the tenants, to ensuring that rental agreement is fair and transparent and legal compliances. Next one is reducing homelessness. It's aimed to reduce the risk of homelessness and provide stability for vulnerable population and increase access of affordable housing options. Now over to Ayushi. She will explain us measures of tenancy reforms.
Measures of tenancy reform. It includes regulation of rent, security of tenure, and the last one, right to ownership. So, regulation of rent. Tenants in India during the pre-independence era period extravagant rents that ranged from 35% to 75% of the gross produce. Reforms to the tenancies law were implemented to control rent, were given tenants a secure place to live and grant them ownership rights. With the passing of laws, the early 1950s to control the rent payable by cultivators, fair rent was established at 20% to 25% of gross production in all states, with the exception of Punjab, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir, Tamil Nadu, and some areas of Andhra Pradesh. The reform made an effort to either completely forbid tenancy or restrict rent to give tenants some kind of security. In West Bengal and Kerala, the agrarian system underwent a drastic transformation that granted tenants land rights. Security of tenure. The second significant reform enacted through Tenancy Act throughout the first three 5-year plans were the provision of security of tenure. The security of tenure encouraged cultivators to improve their land Furthermore, it contributes to the achievement of two fundamental goals of land reforms: increased productivity and the promotion of social justice. Most states have passed laws to protect tenants from eviction and to grant them permanent rights to land. Key components that make the security of tenure legislation are as follows: a tenant was guaranteed a minimum area in the event of resumption, and termination could only occur in the line with the law. The land might be resumed by an owner but only for personal cultivation. The landlord should leave some land for the tenant to cultivate. The tenant should never be made landless. The last one, right to ownership. The grant of ownership rights to tenants was the third significant element of tenancy law. Tenants have been declared the owners of the land on which they cultivate in terms of ownership. They are required to compensate the owners. The amount of compensation should not be greater than the fair rate. In some state, provisions have been made that allow the tenant to buy the leased land after paying a fee. Now over to Shivani. She will tell you the types of tenants.
So now we have discussed about the types of the tenants. There are the three types of the tenants. The first one is the occupancy tenants, the second one is the tenants at will, and the last one is the subtenants. So first of all, we are discuss the occupancy tenants. Occupancy tenants are those tenants which are enjoyed the permanent and heritable rights over the land, and they had the security of tenure. Also, they could claim the compensation from the landlords for any improvement affect the land. Then the second one is the tenant at will. This means that they do not enjoy any right over the land and can be evicted by the landlords at any time, and at their will, and also they raise their rent at any time. And the last one is the subtenants. When occupancy tenant does not cultivate the land himself and give the same on rent to the other cultivators, then the same cultivator called the subtenants. Now we have discussed about the tenancy reforms during the third, fourth, and sixth 5-year plan. The first one is the third 5-year plan. Under this plan, the ultimate objective was to grant the ownership rights to as many tenants as feasible. This means that, according to the policy, the state should investigate the issue and choose the best course of action in light of the current situation. In the fourth 5-year plan, it proposed that the tenancies were suggested to the declared non-resumable and permanent except in the case of the landowners working in defense services or with any disability. As a result, the land where the farmers and the artisans had built their homes would now be their own home. All their efforts were partially successful in the revising the conditions of the British era. But still, there were the problem of the tenants being forced to still the lands due to poverty. It was advised that the government work to include them in the institutional credit design. Then, in the sixth 5-year plan, a time-bound schedule was given to the state to implement the measures of the land reforms. Additionally, it advised that within a year, state without any legislative provisions for granting ownership rights to all the tenants bring in the necessary legislation by 1981 to 1982. However, it was not achieved in all states. Thank you. Over to the Saima. She will tell you about the overall conclusion of this topic.
Coming up with the results of tenancy reforms, here are few positive impacts of it. They are security of tenure, ownership rights, fair rental arrangements, and it also decreased the tenancy disputes. Legislations were passed in most of the states and it proved to be a big success in Karnataka, Kerala, and West Bengal. Operation Barga was also introduced by the left led government in the year 1977. Overall, the program incorporating these reforms since independence have not resulted in any appreciable result. There were significant gaps between policy, legislation, and their implementation. However, the area under tenancy has clearly decreased, but only a portion of renters have gained ownership rights. Thank you.